All right, let's get right into it. Today, we are tackling something really important, but also something that's flown under the radar for way too long when it comes to heart disease. It's this whole story about a medical mystery, a clue that got lost, and a genetic lottery that, believe it or not, millions and millions of people are a part of. We've all probably heard a story like this, or maybe we even know someone. They do everything by the book. They eat right, they exercise, their cholesterol numbers look perfect, and then, boom, they have a heart attack. It's the super frustrating question that has left doctors scratching their heads for decades. Like, what is going on here? What's the missing piece of the puzzle? Well, it turns out the answer for a massive chunk of the population could come down to just one number. We're talking about roughly 20% of people on the entire planet. That's 1 out of every 5 who have this hidden genetic risk factor. And the crazy part is, the standard tests, they don't even look for it. They miss it completely. Okay, so it's time to pull back the curtain and see what this hidden culprit really is. I mean, for decades, it was just out there, flying totally under the radar. But now the science is so strong, you just can't ignore it anymore. It's called lipoprotein A, or for short, you'll hear it called Lp(a). Now, what is it? Just think of it like a little taxi in your blood that carries cholesterol around. But here's the absolute key takeaway. Your lifestyle, it doesn't really matter for this one. How much you have is pretty much locked in by your genes. So what's the big deal? Why is this one so different? The best way to think about it is like this. Lpa is LDL's much, much more dangerous cousin. You see, it starts as a regular old LDL particle, the bad cholesterol we hear about all the time. But then it's got this extra protein. It's called apoprotein(a) that's kind of shrink-wrapped around it. And that extra protein is the problem. It makes the whole thing super sticky, way more inflammatory, just a whole lot more dangerous. Okay, but if this thing is so common and so dangerous, why haven't we heard about it? Why is this just coming up now for so many of us? Well, the backstory here is actually pretty wild. It's one of those classic scientific stories of a clue being found, then totally lost, and then found again. Believe it or not, Lpa was discovered all the way back in 1963. But then, in the 90s, things just stalled. The science hit a brick wall. See, the tests they were using to measure it were just not very good, so the results were all over the place. One study said one thing, another said the opposite. So, the medical world kind of just moved on. But then, 2009 happened. Thanks to modern genetics, scientists could just skip the measurement problem altogether and look directly at the gene responsible for Lpa. And what they found was game-changing. They proved once and for all that high Lpa directly causes heart disease. No more confusion. And here's the real kicker. You know how you can lower your LDL cholesterol with diet, exercise, statins? Well, with Lpa, none of that works. Your level is pretty much fixed. It gets set by your genes when you're a little kid, around age 5, and then it just stays put for your entire adult life. So living a healthy lifestyle is obviously super important for a million other reasons, but it's not going to budge this one specific number. So let's talk about how this thing actually does its damage. It's basically a 1-2 punch, a double threat. On one hand, it causes that classic plumbing problem in our arteries, but it also has this other, really dangerous trick up its sleeve. Okay, threat number 1. Since Lpa is built on an LDL particle, it does all the nasty stuff that regular LDL does. It wriggles its way into your artery walls, it drops off its cholesterol cargo, and it helps build up that atherosclerotic plaque, the gunk that makes your arteries hard and narrow. But wait, there's more. It doesn't stop there. Remember that extra sticky protein? Well, it looks a lot like another molecule in our body called plasminogen, which is what we use to bust up blood clots. So Lpa gets in the way of that process. It makes it harder for your body to dissolve clots. And on top of that, it's carrying around this payload of oxidized phospholipids, which are like little inflammation bombs, just fueling the fire inside your arteries. And the consequences of all this? They're really serious. High Lpa is a huge independent risk factor for heart attacks and strokes. But the connection that really makes scientists sit up and take notice is the one with aortic valve stenosis. That's when the main valve of your heart gets narrowed. The data we have now is so strong that many experts think Lpa is probably the single biggest driver of that condition. All right, so this is obviously a big deal. The next question is probably the one on your mind right now. How in the world do you find out if this is your problem? And here's some really good news. It's so simple. All it takes is one inexpensive blood test. That's it. And because that number is set by your genes and doesn't change, the general consensus is you only need to get tested once. Just once in your entire life, and you'll know where you stand. Okay, so let's say you take the test and the number comes back high. What then? For a long, long time, the answer to that question was pretty frustrating, honestly. But that's changing. Now we have a solid game plan for what to do right now, and an even more exciting one for what's just around the corner. So as of today, there isn't a specific drug approved to lower LPA. That means the strategy is to be absolutely relentless about everything else you can control. We're talking about crushing your LDL cholesterol and ApoB levels, getting them as low as you possibly can. Perfect blood pressure control, and of course, absolutely no smoking. But the future looks amazing. There's a whole new class of drugs in the final stages of testing that are designed to basically just switch off the LPA gene. And get this, they can drop LPA levels by more than 80%. That could mean completely wiping out this genetic risk. For good. Just to put this all into perspective for a second, there's a great quote from the experts on this. We often hear about something called familial hypercholesterolemia, or FH, as being this big genetic cause of heart disease. Well, high LPA is so much more common. Like, it's not even close. It's not in the same ballpark, not even in the same zip code. This is a huge, huge issue that affects the entire population. So let's just boil it all down. What's the bottom line? We have a risk factor that hits 1 in every 5 people. It's a direct, powerful cause of heart disease. And it's about to become treatable. It's been hiding in plain sight for decades, and it's time we all started paying attention. And that really brings us to the final and maybe the most important question of all. Look, information is power, right? And when you have a risk this big and a test this easy, the real question isn't what is LPA anymore. The real question is, knowing what you know now, what are you going to do about it?